Hello and welcome to the third unit of this course, which is about conditionals. I'm Nestor Singer, the tutor, and this is part of the English Language 5 course unit. We're going to start this presentation by discussing the main word that makes a conditional, which is probably if. However, there are many words that could replace if in a sentence. Just to name a few, we got unless, when, as long as soon as, providing that. Notice that the difference between these two is that, grammatically speaking, provided that is the one that you should use. Providing that is something that we tend to use when we speak, and it's considered rather informal. And some people even think, or they say, that it doesn't exist, but it does. Assuming, even if, suppose, supposing, imagine, if only, but for, and whether. I explained in class the use of but for. Basically, but for is followed by a noun. But for your help, we wouldn't have done it. But for your enthusiasm, this call would have been a disaster. So remember, but for is followed by a noun. And whether has that implicit meaning of or not. He didn't tell me whether he was coming or not. However, if you make that explicit and you write it in a sentence, you can only use whether, but you cannot say he didn't tell me if he was coming or not. That sentence would be wrong, and you need to say he didn't tell me whether he was coming or not. Whether is the only option when you got or not written in the sentence. So having discussed those options, let's move on to the conditional forms. We've got 4 different types: the zero conditional, the first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. Let's start by talking about the form. And we got that the zero conditional is if plus present simple and present simple. We tend to use this when we talk about general truths or facts. I remember that Paula in the Portuguese section gave a very interesting definition, which I don't remember at the moment, but it was a very good one. Unchanging facts, I believe that she said, and it's actually true. For the first conditional, we got if plus present simple, will, might, can, could, or even the imperative, depending on what you want to say. For example, if you are tired, go to bed. If you're hungry, eat. So that would be the first conditional too. And then it is used for possible action and the possible result. Now we're going to draw a line here because we're going to make the difference between what's real and what is unreal. So when we deal with the second and third conditional, we actually deal with the subjunctive form, and that is why the second conditional and the third conditional use past forms to talk about perhaps a present situation. Let's go into discuss that in a moment. The second conditional is if plus past simple, would or could, and it has 2 main purposes. One is to show an imaginary situation, or if you are I don't know, more sophisticated, you would probably say an hypothetical situation, which would be all right, and also suggestion. The third conditional is probably the most difficult of all in terms of form. Students get quite confused with it. If plus past perfect, might, would, have, and then the verb in past participle. And it's used to talk about regrets most of the times. So as I was saying, the second conditional and the third conditional deal with unreal situations. The second conditional is used to talk about a present imaginary situation, while the third conditional is used to talk about a past unreal situation. Having said that, most people tend to have problems remembering the structures. As I told you in class, the easiest way to remember them is by using the first conditional. You know that it's if plus present simple and then will. That's the basic structure. So if we use the back shifting from the reported speech, that is to go 1 tense back, the whole time, we get the second conditional and the third conditional. If we say, what's the past form of present simple? Past simple. And what is the past form of will? Would. So we got the second conditional. If we do that again, we got, what is the past form of past simple? Past perfect. What is the past form of would? It doesn't have one per se. It needs have and the verb past participle to talk about the past. And there you go, the third conditional. So if you apply the backshifting technique to the first conditional and then to the second conditional, you get all those structures. Now, in terms of likelihood, the zero conditional is 100% certain in terms that the if clause always takes place. It always happens. It's a general truth. In the first conditional, it has basically a 50-50 chance of happening. It might not happen. If you study, you'll get good grades. You might not study and fail miserably. The second conditional is about 20%. It's very unlikely, but still possible. But when we talk about suggestions, I would say that it's actually impossible. If I were you, I'll never be you, so that's 0%. And the same with the third conditional, which is 0 because it already happened. So there is very little that you can do. So to me, as I said in class, this is the master chart. This is what you should know about conditionals. Now we're going to talk about the mixed conditionals. Basically, they mean the effect, the imaginary effect of the first clause of the second one. I'll say that again. Mixed conditionals are all about the effect of the main of the if clause over the main clause. That's it. If you think about it, if more people had signed the petition, the shopping mall wouldn't be here. So basically, the shopping mall is there, and there's very little that we can do about it. However, if more people had signed the petition back then, the shopping mall wouldn't be here. So we're talking about this is all fiction. So if more people had signed the petition back then, the shopping mall wouldn't be here now. If we looked at the second example, if I spoke Chinese now, I would have understood what Janice was saying back then. Do I speak Chinese? No. But if I did, I would have understood what she said back then. Again, it's imaginary things. The first example, it's an imaginary past situation and its effect on a present action or a present situation. And the second structure is the possible effect of an imaginary present situation on a past one. So that's basically it. The third example that we got there, if I went out to the cinema, my mom would tell me to take my jumper with me. That is not a conditional per se, but it's basically a real situation. When you have, let's say, past simple and then would or used to, basically you got two past forms, and in that case the if means whenever. Every time I went out to the cinema, my mom would tell me to take a jumper with me. So it's just describing a series of actions in the past. It's not fiction, it's real. There's no imaginary situation there, it's real. Now, as to the inverted conditionals, in one of the sections, some of the students struggled with this. It basically means that you replace if in all of the examples that we got here, and you change it by something else. In the case of the first conditional, you replace the if by should. I told you that we got structures such as if you should come, if you happen to come, if you should happen to come. That basically, if you use those three structures in a first conditional, those sentences are a bit more unlikely. Alright? But if you want to invert the conditional, you should start with should. Basically, I told you this so that you know where that should came from. What about the second conditional? If she came, we would watch a movie. If she were to come, basically makes it more hypothetical. But if we look at the inverted form, we got were she to come, and we use that structure with all second conditionals. when we want to make them more emphatic. Remember that inverted conditional is basically emphasizing and being more formal. I told you that when we want to use the verb to be, we don't need to say were she to be. No. We say were she happy, were she married, were she something. But we don't double the verb. We don't say were she to be. That's actually wrong. And the third conditional, I would say this is the easiest one in terms of form. You simply replace the if by had and then the verb. If you look at them, they look like questions, right? As if they're all well questions, but they're not questions. We're just making the conditionals more formal and more emphatic. We're going to deal with similar structures in the next course unit when you deal with stylistic inversion. Now, this is something that for most of you was actually new, and that is that you can use will or going to in the main clause when you want to express some of the following. When you want to show a polite request, insistence, refusal, result, willingness, or future or intentions, you may actually do that. I won't read all of the examples that we got because they are quite self-explanatory. The word is basically there, but what you can infer from this, if you look at the examples, is that will has many uses. Will can express future. Will can express possibility. It's the highest degree of certainty, so it's a fact. Willingness, that you want to do something. And it also shows habits. And that's why we got if you will keep eating chocolate, because it's basically habit. If it's willingness, it can also show unwillingness or refusal. If you won't turn the music down. So basically, all of these show the many possibilities that will has as a modal verb. It's quite interesting, really, like the possibilities using that word. And lastly, these are the references that I used to create this presentation. I strongly suggest that you read the advanced language practice. I mentioned that you can practice conditional forms in chapter 8, and I really encourage you to do so. If I rightly remember, in the PDF, they are available from page 58 onwards. Here in the slide it says 46 to 40. From 46 to 48. But that's the real textbook. In the PDF file, I believe it's pages. The explanations are on page 56 and 57, and the grammar practice is from page 58 onwards. It's also important that you practice in the grammar for CA and proficiency. And if you find these sort of uses far too advanced and would like to get some practice with the basics, I would suggest the first certificate language practice, which is also available on the Our Course Wiki. So thank you very much for watching. I'm very sorry that it took me so long to upload this video, but unfortunately I've been rather busy, and for those who are still wondering, I'm still dying in the inside, but I really wanted to update and upload the video today. So I'll see you in class next week.